Some men don't need enemies to destroy them. They do it themselves. Not with fists, not with reckless actions, but with words. Words that sound confident, maybe even wise at first. But if you listen closely, they're soaked in excuses, coated with ego, and dripping with fear. You see, words are mirrors. They reflect the state of your mind. If your language is built on blame, laziness, and self-deception, your life will quietly follow that path downhill. One sentence at a time, one excuse at a time, until one day you look around and realize you've become a shadow of the man you could have been. In this video, we're not here to sugarcoat anything. We're going to expose 9 dangerous phrases that many men use without even thinking, phrases that slowly chip away at their discipline, dignity, and respect. And more importantly, we'll explore what a Stoic man would say instead, how to replace weak language with strong, deliberate words that sharpen your character instead of selling it off piece by piece. Because language isn't just noise, it's a signal. It tells the world and yourself who you really are. Maybe you've said something in the past and instantly felt the sting of regret, knowing it came from a place of weakness, not strength. But here's the truth. The way you speak shapes the way you live. You can choose to keep repeating phrases that lock you into mediocrity, or you can choose words that push you toward growth. As Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." That means every day is a new chance to refine who you are, to speak with precision instead of pride, to respond with clarity instead of ego, and to let your words become the whetstone that sharpens your soul. So, as we begin, I want you to listen closely, not just to the phrases we'll expose, but to the subtle ways they might have slipped into your own speech. Because the enemy isn't always out there. Sometimes, it's in the very words you let escape your lips. Let's start. Part 1. That's just how I am. One of the most quietly dangerous phrases a man can say is this: "That's just how I am." It sounds firm. It sounds like conviction. But underneath, it's not strength, it's surrender. Not surrender to truth, not to principle, but to stagnation. I knew a man named Carl, retired Navy, always in a sharp suit, the kind of guy who could command a room with nothing more than a glance. From the outside, he looked like discipline personified. But if you knew him closely, you'd see the truth. When his wife asked for more connection, for more vulnerability, he'd mutter, "I'm not built like that." When his son tried to open up about old wounds, Carl would shut it down. "That's not how I do things." And so, year after year, nothing changed, nothing moved, until one day, nothing remained. His wife didn't slam the door when she left. She simply stopped waiting for a man who refused to evolve. That's the real danger of this phrase. It's a prison sentence disguised as strength. It tells the world you've stopped learning, stopped questioning, stopped growing. The Stoics saw life as a constant workshop. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." That's not just poetry, it's a survival strategy. Because the moment you decide, "This is who I am, and I'm not changing," you stop sharpening your soul. And when you stop sharpening, you start rusting. Growth isn't about abandoning your core values, it's about refining them. A Stoic man doesn't hide behind identity like armor. He uses truth like a whetstone. He adjusts, he listens, he evolves not because the world demands it, but because his own soul does. So here's the question. When was the last time you challenged one of your own beliefs? When was the last time you admitted you might be wrong? Because the man who clings to, "That's just how I am," isn't proving his strength, he's announcing his decay. And if you keep saying it long enough, one day, all you'll have left is the phrase itself and a long list of people who stopped waiting for you to grow. Part 2. Real men don't talk about feelings. One of the most damaging lies passed from man to man, especially in older generations, is this: real men don't talk about feelings. It's often worn like a badge of honor, a sign of toughness. But in reality, it's not strength, it's fear wearing a mask. Fear of being seen, fear of being vulnerable, fear of facing the war inside your own chest. Research from the American Psychological Association is clear. Men who consistently suppress their emotions are at a much higher risk for depression, heart disease, and even early death. Yet the myth lives on. Here's the truth. Stoicism has been badly misunderstood here. People here control your emotions and twist it into deny your emotions. That's not Stoicism. That's emotional avoidance. Look at Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful rulers in history. In his private writings, he didn't pretend he was fearless. He dissected his grief, his doubts, his flaws, so they wouldn't control him. That's emotional clarity, not emotional suppression. When a man hides every feeling, thinking it will make him untouchable, he's actually burying himself alive. The pain doesn't disappear, it rots. It leaks out later as anger, addiction, coldness, or complete disconnection from the people who matter most. A Stoic man doesn't fear feelings, he fears being ruled by feelings he's never named. Emotional maturity doesn't mean breaking down in public, but it does mean telling yourself the truth in private. It means observing your inner storms with ruthless honesty so you can choose your response instead of reacting on impulse. Think about it. When was the last time you admitted out loud that something hurt you? Not to gain sympathy, but to take its power away? The cracks in you are not weaknesses, they're openings for light, for wisdom, for growth. Silence can be noble, but when silence is just fear, pretending to be strength, it slowly erodes you from the inside. A Stoic doesn't stay silent to hide, he stays silent to understand. Then, when he speaks, his words are deliberate, clear, and strong enough to steady himself and those around him. Part 3. It's not my fault. Few phrases reveal weakness faster than these 4 words. It's not my fault. On the surface, it sounds like self-defense. But underneath, it's an admission, an announcement that you've surrendered all agency over your life. This is the language of a man who sees himself as the victim of every storm, but never the captain of his own ship. The problem isn't that bad things happen to you, bad things happen to all of us. The problem is when you decide they define you, and you hand over your power to every circumstance, every person, every setback. The Stoics had no patience for this mindset. Epictetus wrote, "It is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In other words, the event itself is rarely the real enemy. It's your interpretation of it that gives it power. And no interpretation is more destructive than believing responsibility always belongs to someone else. Here's the danger. When you keep blaming the economy, your boss, your wife, your childhood, your enemies, you're not explaining your pain. You're giving away your power. You're silencing the only voice that could change your direction, your own. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the heart of ownership. Recognizing that while you can't control everything, you can always control how you respond. So, the next time something falls apart and you feel, "It's not my fault," rising in your throat, stop. Replace it with, "It's now my responsibility." Because that small shift is the difference between staying bitter and becoming better. Life will hand you trials you never asked for. Yes, some wounds were never your doing, but carrying them into the future as an excuse to stagnate, that's not wisdom, it's cowardice with a long memory. A Stoic man doesn't deny injustice. He refuses to live in reaction to it. He knows that blame is easy, but responsibility, that's where the real strength lives. Part 4. I deserve better. Few phrases carry the quiet stench of entitlement like this one. I deserve better. It sounds like self-respect, And sometimes, in moments of genuine injustice, it can be. But more often, it's a mask, a way to hide laziness, resentment, and the belief that life should hand you more without you earning more. Here's the trap. Men who say, "I deserve better," the loudest are rarely the ones doing the quiet daily work of actually becoming better. They wait, they demand, they expect the world, their boss, their partner, or fate itself to deliver something higher, cleaner, richer, simply because they feel they're owed. The Stoics dismantled this mindset centuries ago. They taught that life owes you nothing. Dignity doesn't come from what you think you're entitled to. It comes from what you cultivate, regardless of whether anyone notices. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste his time wondering what a good man should be. He wrote, "Be one." That single line slices right through entitlement. It doesn't ask what you've been denied, it asks what you're doing right now to live with virtue. The man stuck in "I deserve better" is often doing less than he thinks and expecting more than he's earned. He's trading humility for hunger and craftsmanship for complaint. A Stoic man doesn't walk around with a list of what he's owed. He walks with discipline, with silence, with the willingness to do what's hard without asking the world to clap for him. As Epictetus put it, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. So, here's the question. Do you spend more time announcing your worth or developing it? Because the moment you spend more energy demanding rewards than sharpening your craft, you've already started losing ground. A man of substance doesn't just declare he deserves better, he makes himself better until better has no choice but to meet him where he stands. Part 5, that's not my job. You'll hear this one from men who've quietly stopped leading but still want to be seen as dependable. That's not my job. It sounds like healthy boundaries, but most of the time, it's just avoidance dressed up as maturity. It's the slow retreat from responsibility until all that's left is routine and the bare minimum effort needed to get by. I remember a man named Rye, an old machinist from Pittsburgh, worked the same factory line for 30 years, never missed a shift, 5 a.m., sharp every day. On paper, he was the definition of reliable, but at home, he lived by, "That's not my job." The dishes? Not his job. Helping his teenage son make a big decision? Not his job. Talking through anything emotional with his wife? Definitely not his job. He provided, he worked, he paid bills, and he thought that was enough. But when his wife left after 28 years, he sat in the same kitchen chair he'd always occupied and said, "I did everything I was supposed to do." That's the problem. He never asked what needed to be done, only what was assigned to him. That's not leadership, that's silent retreat. The Stoics never lived by duty alone, they lived by purpose. Marcus Aurelius asked, "What is your vocation?" To be a good man, not just a man who checks boxes, but one who sees a gap and fills it, even when it's uncomfortable, unseen, or unacknowledged. When you repeatedly say, "That's not my job," what you're really saying is, "I don't want to be inconvenienced by responsibility." And the moment you start outsourcing effort, your influence begins to fade. People stop leaning on you and start working around you. A Stoic man understands that true power isn't in what you avoid, it's in what you embrace, even when it's not expected, even when no one's watching. Part 6, it is what it is. On the surface, it sounds wise, calm, even a little stoic. But most of the time, when a man shrugs and says, "It is what it is," he's not practicing acceptance, he's practicing resignation. According to behavioral science, one of the first signs of learned helplessness is verbal surrender. That moment when someone stops believing their actions can influence reality. And this phrase? It's the verbal white flag. For many men, especially those worn down by years of disappointments, "it is what it is" becomes a quiet death sentence. It's not composure, it's emotional shutdown. It's the slow erosion of ambition disguised as maturity. The Stoics did teach acceptance, but never passivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's a call to action, not a license to stop caring. Seneca put it sharper. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And one of the greatest wastes is pretending you're above the fight when, deep down, you've simply given up. Here's the danger. When you lean on "it is what it is" too often, it spreads. It seeps into your relationships, your work, your health. You stop fighting for the things that matter, and one day you realize you're not respected, not feared, not even loved. You're simply unnoticed. A Stoic man makes a crucial distinction. Acceptance means seeing the truth clearly, then acting on what you can control. Capitulation means seeing the truth and deciding to do nothing. One sharpens you, the other sedates you. So next time you feel "it is what it is" rising in your chest, stop and ask, is this real Stoic acceptance, or am I just too tired to care? Because every time you choose passivity, you make yourself easier to ignore. And that slowly, quietly, is the cruelest fate for any man who was once capable of more. Part 7, I don't care anymore. It usually comes out in a sigh, a mutter, or a defeated laugh. I don't care anymore. And at first it sounds like detachment, like you've risen above the chaos. But more often, it's not enlightenment, it's emotional burnout. It's the voice of a man who's decided it's easier to stop trying than to risk caring again. Here's the danger. The moment you stop caring, you stop investing. You stop showing up for the people and the goals that once mattered. And while you tell yourself you're protecting your peace, what you're really doing is letting apathy eat away at your purpose. The Stoics didn't teach us to stop caring. They taught us to care selectively, to pour energy into the things within our control and release the rest. Marcus Aurelius cared deeply about justice, discipline, and service. What he refused to care about were the petty, the shallow, and the meaningless. That's not apathy, that's focus. When a man says, "I don't care anymore" too often, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. His ambition fades, his standards drop, his relationships weaken, and life begins to treat him exactly as he treats it, with indifference. If you've ever been tempted to say it, stop and ask yourself, is this truly something I should let go of? Or am I just tired of the fight? Because giving up on the wrong things can save your energy, but giving up on the right things can cost you your soul. A Stoic man keeps caring where it counts, not recklessly, not for everything, but for what aligns with his values. He knows that caring is not a weakness, it's a weapon. Properly aimed, it can rebuild a life. Carelessly abandoned, it can destroy one. Part 8. If it happens, it happens. It rolls off the tongue casually, almost like a mantra. If it happens, it happens. At first, it sounds like acceptance, like you're at peace with whatever comes your way. But most of the time, it's not peace. It's passivity. It's the voice of a man who's surrendered to chance because he's too unwilling or too afraid to prepare, plan, or act. Here's the problem. When you live by "if it happens, it happens," you let life dictate the terms. You give up your role as an active participant and become a spectator in your own story. And while you're waiting for things to just happen, someone else is out there making them happen. The Stoics didn't drift through life hoping for the best. They trained, they prepared, they acted. They accepted outcomes they couldn't control, but only after they'd done everything within their power to influence them. Epictetus put it plainly, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If it happens, skips that second part. It pretends that fate alone decides, while ignoring that your choices are part of fate's equation. Think about the opportunities you've let pass by because you told yourself it wasn't worth the effort unless it was guaranteed. How many relationships, careers, or personal goals have been lost not because you failed, but because you never really tried? A stoic man accepts the limits of control, but he never abandons his duty to act. He steps forward, prepares well, and gives his best shot, then accepts whatever comes, knowing he met it with full strength. So next time you feel, if it happens on your lips, stop. Ask yourself, am I surrendering to wisdom or hiding from effort? Because the difference will decide whether your life moves forward or stays exactly where it island. Part 9. That's not my problem. It sounds efficient, clean, like you're protecting your boundaries. But when a man too often says, that's not my problem, he's not setting boundaries, he's building walls. Don't get me wrong, no one can carry every burden. You can't fix the whole world, and it's healthy to know when something is outside your responsibility. But there's a difference between protecting your energy and abandoning your duty to what's right. The truth is, some of the most defining moments in a man's life come when he chooses to step into a problem that isn't technically his, because it's the right thing to do. Whether it's standing up for a colleague who's being treated unfairly, helping a friend through a crisis, or guiding someone younger who's about to make a mistake, these moments reveal your character. The Stoics understood this balance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he was part of a larger human family, that his actions rippled beyond his own life. Service and justice weren't optional. If you wanted to live with honor, they were core to the vocation of being a good man. When "that's not my problem" becomes your default, people stop seeing you as dependable. They stop trusting you to step in when it matters most. And over time, you stop trusting yourself. You begin to shrink into a smaller, colder version of the man you could have been. A stoic man knows he can't fix everything, but he also knows that when a problem crosses his path and justice, compassion, or courage call him to act, he doesn't look away. He engages, not because it's easy, but because it's who he's choosing to be. So the next time you feel, "that's not my problem" on your lips, ask yourself, is this truly beyond my reach, or am I just avoiding the discomfort of involvement? Because often, the problems you choose to face, especially when you don't have to become the moments that define you. Conclusion. Closing the 9 phrases. Every man leaves a trail. Sometimes it's in the work he's done, the people he's helped, or the example he's set. But more often than we realize, it's in the words he repeats when no one's really listening. These 9 phrases, "that's just how I am." Real men don't talk about feelings. "It's not my fault." "I deserve better." "That's not my job." "It is what it island." "I don't care anymore." "If it did." "Happens." "It happens." "That's not my problem." They don't just sound weak. They are weakness distilled into sound. And the more often you say them, the more they dye your character with their color. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." I'd add, your words are the brush. Speak like a victim and you'll live like one. Speak like a man who hides from growth, and life will treat you exactly that way. But here's the truth, none of these phrases have to be permanent. The prison they create is built from the inside out, which means you can tear it down from the inside out. Every time you choose a stronger sentence, every time you replace an excuse with ownership or avoidance with action, you rewire not just your language, but your life. A stoic man doesn't speak to impress. He speaks to be precise. He speaks with awareness, restraint, and clarity. And when he's silent, that silence carries weight because it's chosen, not forced by fear. So, here's my challenge to you. For the next week, listen to yourself. Catch these phrases the moment they rise. Swap them for words that sharpen you instead of dull you. And watch what happens not just in how people respond to you, but in how you begin to respect yourself again. Because in the end, your words aren't just sound, they're signals. They tell the world who you are, but more importantly, They tell you who you're becoming. Choose them well,